Good afternoon. Welcome back to your show. Yes, it's me again, I'm afraid. We're talking migration and our living standards falling. And, excuse me, start off with a rough voice. Joining me today are esteemed Romanian author Amara Rotundo, former Labour activist who has lived the reality of the opportunities and barriers of migration in this country. We have Tracey Hylton, campaigner. And we have Bakers Union President Ian Hodson, who has spent years on the front line fighting for workers who are being convinced that the person next to them is to blame for all their woes. Welcome all. How are you?
Very good. Thank you very much for the invite. I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, our pleasure. Our pleasure. Thank you so much for coming in. So migration, it's so often blamed for pretty much all the ills in the world at the moment, I think, isn't it? Falling living standards, it's the person coming over in the small boat, failing services, it can't possibly be the person who owns the private jet. From your perspective, what do you see as the real drivers behind the anger we're seeing in a lot of communities with regards to migrants?
Well, I'm certain that the ruling class locally, but of course very much internationally, are engineering this as a scapegoat for the exploitation and warfare that they're performing elsewhere. And I think that unlike many others on the left, I would say that perhaps mass migration is a problem. However, we should never look at the immigrants as the enemy because they're victims like we are. However, they are used as a scapegoat and deflection from the problems of, like I said, war, which displace tremendous amounts of people, and of course the impoverishing of every country. For instance, I'm from Romania, so I've noticed how they've engineered the theft of our natural resources so that we lost half of the population to mass migration to Europe, elsewhere as well, and then depleted our like I said, natural resources, because that's where the real wealth lies, and then the culture diminished the culture, and then they started recently to replace our own population with masses of migrants from elsewhere. And now we see in Romania what I have seen in the West for a very long time, which is the two camps being pit together against each other, so that nobody questions what's happening at the top and why all of this is happening. And I do believe that it's part of the competition that migrants bring is a negative in some regards. And of course, the corporate overlords are benefiting from the cheap labor. Of course they are. And of course, they're very happy to take people who are more desperate, who are happy to work for less, and disregard their own workers. And of course, they're happy to then gaslight them, saying, no, there's no problem. If you have a problem with this, then you're racist. Where the population or the local, say, English people should resist this discourse is to blame it on the immigrants, because it's not the immigrants' fault. And speaking as an immigrant myself, or from what I can see everywhere, a lot of immigrants prefer to stay home, and they don't want to be displaced. They don't want to travel the world and be treated like second citizens and forget their land, their family, their culture. And then when you come to a country like this as an immigrant, you're often treated as a bit of a cultural oddity. There is kindness towards immigrants here. There is a lot of kindness. I've benefited from it. But also, culturally, you're put through a filter where you have to simplify yourself. You become a bit of an eccentric specimen. You're never treated really equally. So, of course, a lot of immigrants would prefer to build their own country. They would prefer to be with their family, with their land. When they come here, they don't deserve to be treated as if they created all of this. It's the neoliberal order that has created all this. And I think it's a real problem because it's depleting national economies everywhere. It's ruining the middle class and the working class everywhere. And of course, the gap between the wealth of the ruling class and the rest of people is just massive.
It's as we've been talking about in this all day in various programs today, actually, it's divide and rule. It's another example of that we're seeing. Ian Hodson, can I come to you next, sir? Hello, mate. How are you doing? We seem to have some sound issues with Ian. I'm not hearing him at this end.
You not hear me?
Are you muted, Ian? That's the one. There we go.
All right, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now, mate.
Hey, that's great, mate. I said it's been a while, Damo.
It has been a while, hasn't it, sir? You're still looking as pretty as ever.
Thank you very much. So are you, mate. So are you.
So, yeah, what's your perspective on the real drivers behind the anger we're seeing in communities with regards to migrants?
I mean, when I go into workplaces, I mean, one of the things I would say is when I'm in workplaces, what I see is people, from Burnley, from Bucharest, working alongside each other. They're all working long hours. They're struggling to pay the bills. And the boss knows if they can get them pointing the fingers at each other, then of course they're not pointing the fingers at him for the low pay, are they? I mean, politicians and the press have been stoking division for decades, for their failures, political failure. Such things as like it's migrants that's holding down wages, all the normal stuff. It's migrants that's filling up the houses, it's migrants that's clogging up the NHS. But the real reality is the opposite. I mean, it's bad bosses that have been cutting pay, it's governments refusing to build homes, and it's politicians that have been underfunding the NHS. No migrant worker ever decided to close a GP surgery. Those decisions are all made in Westminster, and one of the things I would say is, it doesn't matter whether you're from Poland, Pakistan, or Preston when it comes to pay. If we're going to win in the workplace, and every time I've organised workers and I've had to go into a dispute with the boss, it's those workers that came together that won it. I mean, if we'd have been divided, we would not have won it. I mean, solidarity is what builds our strength, and division is what causes us to lose out. So, I mean, for me, the ability for them to keep us divided is what keeps making sure that we stay in poverty, with job insecurity, and why society is becoming more unequal. We have to recognise it's not a migrant. It's not somebody that's come here, whether they've come here on a small boat, whether they've come here because they've got employment over here. It's not other poor people. It's people who want to extract wealth, and we need to understand that the division that's being caused is being caused just to extract wealth from the majority to give to the people at the very top of society.
Yeah, neoliberalism, divide and rule. Tracey Hylton, are you there? Where would you like to come in on this, please?
Hang on, let me unmute. Can you hear me?
I can indeed. How are you?
Not too bad.
Yeah, the anger the anger being driven in many communities because of migrants or because of what we're being told about them. What's your perspective on that?
Well, it's the same old, isn't it? It's from the playbook of the 1930s. At the end of the day, it's scapegoating again, and nobody's really looking at it because the narrative in itself is false. They keep going on about migrants. We're on about a lot of people are asylum seekers and refugees as opposed to migrants. Migrants already have a route to get here, and then they're called illegal immigrants. Well, there isn't, because as we do know, in the UN, there is provision for people who are seeking sanctuary, asylum, refuge to come here. And if you're running away from a war-strained country, your house has been set on fire, your village has been bombed, etc. You ain't got a passport, you haven't got your birth certificate, you haven't got your documentation. They will be able to, confirm who you are somewhere down the line. And we saw that wasn't a problem when this happened in Ukraine. And obviously, I believe that anybody coming from war should be supported, but they actually put a system in place there for people coming from Ukraine when war's been going on in other places for a long time. My union, PCS, recently launched the Safe Routes policy in the House of Parliament, if you want to look at that. But my grandparents, for instance, my granddad came over in the Second World War when people from the colonies from Caribbean were asked to come over. Then he came back over before the Windrush after the Second World War. My grandma came over in the Windrush, and my grandma was a midwife in the early days of the NHS. And people forget, if you take away all the migrant doctors and you take away a lot of other things. I mean, I said to people, if you don't like migration, do me a favour on Saturday night, don't get a pizza, don't get a curry. Don't play any soul records, etc., because they brought so much. You know what I mean? If it bothers you that much, just don't use them. And we just have to keep going back on what this whole narrative is, because they're definitely just going back to the 1930s and blaming things, we know it's all down to money, because it all goes to capitalism, because they're making money sending arms out to bomb out places, and then they will make their money eventually to go back and, like, rehab those places. And, if Donald Trump even wants to build a every area on Palestine, but you know what I mean? There's a whole economy around that. And there's an illegal economy in getting people out on these small boats and then put them into gangs and trafficking them, etc. If they had a legal route, it wouldn't be a problem, because people want to work legally and they want to contribute. And many people who come here, no matter whether it's an official migrant, once they get status, a lot of them set up business, a lot of them work, and a lot of them contribute a great deal. My union is going to be having a report out soon which shows the actual economic benefit of migrants. So we just need to keep pushing back on this nonsense narrative that they keep pushing. But where it comes from, it makes people feel comfortable. It makes them think that other people are the problem. It's not their fault, and it gives them an excuse to blame other people. And basically what it has done, especially with the government going along with it in reform, is to give people a chance to be openly racist with what they see as genuine, authentic reasons, which we know is nonsense.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course that narrative with reform is being echoed all the time by the current Labour Party. And I'm glad you brought up Windrush, and I'm glad you brought up the NHS, actually, because I'm not a particularly aficionado of migration, so to speak, but the one thing I always remember is that I've always been told the NHS, since the days of Windrush, has always been run by migrants. We've never trained enough people in this country to ever support and run our NHS at all. We've always needed migrants in this country. They've always contributed more to this society than they've ever taken out of it. And we all know this. This is what's so frustrating. And maybe we're in a bit of a leftist bubble about it. I don't know. But I think my next question is, why is it that anger gets channeled towards migrants rather than the government, when we clearly know they're the ones stoking the divide and rule here? Mara, can I come back to you first?
Well, I'm of the opinion that there has been tremendous knowledge, money, expertise put into brainwashing people to always scapegoat other poor people around them rather than just look up. I think that the operations of, let's call it, mind control, that the government has been, performing through the BBC and through little things like TV shows where the villain is always the exotic person. I was watching old episodes of detective stories where the villain had a working class accent. I remember seeing that once. Or the villain had a Russian accent and things like that. Small things which are inserted into popular culture, and of course all the media, all of the discourse, and God knows what else they're doing to siphon legitimate concern that people might have. Like, they have legitimate poverty, they have legitimate losses of whole areas of industry that have happened since, the Second World War. All of the legitimate concerns people might have are always siphoned to hate of other poor people, And I think that wouldn't happen organically without the government being so careful about this, about putting so much money into it, using everything they can. And of course, then comes somebody, a Farage type figure, who knows exactly what to say, and he collects all of that. And unfortunately, this is where I would criticize the left. The left doesn't address the concerns of the working class people that they might have over that. And that's why they turned against Corbyn, I think, at the last election, or before last, when Labour lost, the working class belt in the north.
Yeah.
I think that was poor thinking on behalf of Corbyn to dismiss the concerns of people who wanted to vote Brexit because they wanted a return to sovereignty. Now, if I remember correctly, and I hope I'm wrong, I think that some of those people were called by people in Labour racist. And of course, a lot of working class people were very upset. Some of them were racist, some of them were hateful, but I don't think everybody was who had problems with the EU. I think a lot of people who had problems with the EU they just wanted to come back to something that we have taken for granted since 19th century, which is we have national states. Where national states are good for organizing a large group of people, because that's how else are you going to organize yourself? You can elect your own people who live on the land as well. They can represent your interests, you know them. Whereas if you're governed by globalists, or in the case of EU, a body that sits elsewhere, they don't have any business with, they don't care, they don't breathe your air, they don't bathe in your your rivers. They don't give a fuck. And then, of course, they don't do anything good for you. They're not accountable as well. And of course, normal working class people, or in the case of Romania, peasants, they would feel that. They would feel that the only way that you get control over your country and your well-being is by having local people to represent you, not being governed by God knows where. And I think that the left should address these concerns a bit better. Like I said before, immigrants are people and they're natural allies, but mass immigration is being engineered by the ruling class, and it is a problem. It's a problem for the immigrants, it's a problem for the local, let's say, economies and cultures that are all disappearing in this huge melting pot called globalization, where we're encouraged to become American, basically. Everybody is expected to become American. And that's something the left should address. They should talk to people a bit more, not just automatically dismiss them as racist when they have a problem with immigration.
No, I actually completely agree with that. I think I think it's inarguable that Corbyn did make a little bit of a mess of the entire Brexit debacle. Certainly, I don't believe that all people who voted Brexit are racist by any means. I know a great many people who voted to leave, and they've got perfectly reasonable reasons for doing that. The EU itself needs massive reform, and it doesn't seem to be happening from inside it. And people who had a grievance
become
about
a dictatorship.
that. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, just look at their handling of situations such as Israel and Gaza, for example. I mean, it's loathsome. Tracey Hylton, can I come back to you on this, please?
Yeah, I'll try to be quick. You'll know by my accent, it's a northeast accent. My parents were in the forces, long story. But like, I was raised where my mum came from, in a pit village from the age of 10. I lived there till I was 30. And what happened there is it was always red. You know, you could put a teddy bear up on a red, like a red rosette, and they would get in. And then the last kind of 15 years, we started to get UKIP councillors. This has started a long time back, this narrative, pre-Brexit even, in when Brexit was going through, that increased. And we've seen now, obviously, Durham County Council is reform. But, you know, that was coming in places where there's virtually no diversity whatsoever. There's so many few diverse people from my home village that everybody knows the name of anybody who's non-white. It's that small. But I have a fear. There was rumours going around that a mosque was going to be built in my hometown, which absolute nonsense. And this is what happened was UKIP. They had a shop in my hometown. They had a presence there, and what they did in some ways is they've groomed a lot of people, and that's moved on with reform, because they've moved in and they've listened to the people who saw, quite frankly, Labour stalwarts who were quite comfortable and were in a little clique and weren't bothered about the people anymore. It wasn't like the times when I was a teenager in the miners' strike, where everybody pulled together. There's a film out now about what the miners' wives and everything did. It's not like that time now. It's like you don't see a councillor unless there's an election. And people got sick of that, so you had independents and you got UKIP councillors, and that's built, and that's got where we are now today in reform. When it comes to Brexit, and when we're on about the main migrant thing, well, let's be clear, mostly what they're on about is non-white migrants.
I disagree.
That's what they're against.
I disagree.
But however, I'm just going to make a point. The Brexit thing, that changed because obviously that enabled a lot of people, mainly from Eastern Europe, to come over, and then people started to be anti kind of Eastern Europe migrants as well. I will say that, you know, like putting through things about them, put just as much nonsense around about them, where they're trying to instigate now at the moment that any kind of non-white male asylum seeker is a potential sexual threat. They come out with stuff about Eastern Europeans trying to make out that they're all kind of got something to do with crime and other nonsense stuff. So this has all been allowed to build and give people what they think is the evidence for them to support what they are supporting.
Well,
I need to bring Ian Hodson in on this just quickly, please. Ian?
Yeah, Damo, for me, obviously, the Brexit question, I mean, there'll always be people for and against Brexit. There'll always be people that think we should be back in and people that think we should be back out. I mean, you know, our union was one of those that that actually campaigned to leave the European Union, not because we wanted to stop people coming into the country, but because we recognised that the European Union wasn't the answer to our prayers, and we was able to hide behind decisions made in the European Union, which made our government not accountable. I mean, we believe that the government of the United Kingdom should be accountable to its people. And now can't we see how poor our politicians are, because they can't hide behind the European Union anymore. They're held accountable for the mistakes and the errors that they make, and we can see them every single day. But I think the issue of why we've seen the radicalization of so many in our community, social media plays a massive part in that. I mean, the ability to get messages into people's homes no longer necessarily comes through the TV screen. It's every time they pick up the phone. It's the algorithms. It's the people who control it. I mean, it's controlled now by about 5 billionaires, I believe, every piece of social media that we view. And most of these billionaires have one aim, which is to maximize and, get as much finance out of us as is physically.
That's it. We are rapidly running out of time, coming to a close. I know, Mara, you just wanted to make one quick response to something Tracey said.
Well, I would rather address what Ian said. I think that the billionaires are not just after the money. I think that they use social media very much as very intricate mechanisms, population control, and that they answer probably directly to the states, the covert deep state. And I think that they're not, money explains, a part of it. But I think that what's happening to us is engineered by people very, very intelligent with lots of resources. Like I said, I don't think it's natural.
I'm going to have to stop you there, unfortunately. Thank you so much to Mara Rotundo, Tracey Hylton, and Ian Hodson. I wish I could have chanted on for another half an hour with the three of you. It's been wonderful. But next up is filmmaker John Graham Davies, who is taking the chair to delve into Starmer's Labour Party and the subject of, anti-Semitism. That's the only way you can say it, really, isn't it? 3 sessions of that. Proper highlight. Don't go away. Tune in.